Friends, Rotarians, guests, and those who joined us today via Zoom, welcome to the November 11th meeting of the Rotary Club. I'm Jean West, owner and producer, Faces West Productions, president of the club, and a Paul Harris Fellow. To provide our invocation today is Lori Bollinger, head of the DePaul School. Lori. Oh, perfect timing.
Thank you, President Jean. And good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It is truly an honor to share an invocation today, as today being Veterans Day. In the early 90s, I served as a Department of Defense dependent school educator, serving the Navy and the Marines families. Sorry, that's emotional for me, wow. Serving the Navy and Marine families who were part of the Air Wing at NAF Atsugi in Japan remains near and dear to my heart. I'd like to share an anonymous poem with you in honor of our veterans. It is the veteran, not only the preacher, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the veteran, not only the reporter, who has given us freedom of press. It is the veteran, not only the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the veteran, not only the campus organizer, who has given us the freedom to assemble. It is the veteran, not only the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the veteran, not only the politician, who has given us the right to vote. I am sure that all of us have family and friends who are serving now, and that we have veterans in the room with us. We thank you for your service. I ask you to join me in prayer. Dear God, today we honor our veterans, worthy men and women who give and gave their best when called upon to serve and protect our country. We pray that you will bless them for their unselfish service in the continual struggle to preserve our freedoms, our safety, and our country's heritage for us all. Amen.
I had very same experience.
Did you?
Teaching between children of Navy and Marine families in Oklahoma.
You did? Oh, yes, I did.
And that's where I honed my journalistic skills as a broadcaster of the American Forces Radio Television School. Like below the box.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for your service.
Thanks. Thank you. And now to lead us in the pledge and four-way test is George Fredmeyer III, President of Central Electronic Office Machines Company, Paul Harris Fellow, and Sustaining Member.
Thank you, Jean. Just want to point out that when we go to pledge, that action, arm action, is the same as bell ring. So anybody that can pledge, you can bell ring. We honor our veterans with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And for those of you
Four-way test. Is true. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We've got 3 weeks, first 3 Saturdays in December, from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 9.5 shifts, 4 people per shift, so roughly 56 people would be great. Dogs, family members, kids, everybody's welcome.
anyone who can ring a bell. Sure. All right, you may receive it, Rotary. Thank you. It is always our pleasure to welcome guests. But before we welcome guests, Rotarians, great news. I want to give a shout out to our brand new executive director, Delene Taylor. There will be an official news release, an official announcement, so mom's the word. And we have pledged our Rotarian Doug James the exclusive for Business First. That's a perk of being a Rotarian. So there you go. All right, Rotarians, please go to the microphone and introduce yourself first and your guests.
President Jean, maybe I'm the only one. Casey Mayer with the Waterfront Botanical Gardens. My guest today is Lindsay Ware, Director of, Senior VP of Strategy and Outreach at CoStar. Would you stand up for just a second, please? And Lindsay and I were both recognized in the Business First Enterprising Women class of 2021. So we invited Lindsay here, guest actually at Jay Gallery also. So thank you.
I'm not sure protocol. Am I supposed to say President Jean? Yes, President Jean. I'm Whitney Austin, today's speaker, Executive Director of Whitney Strong. And I would like to recognize my guest, Janae Wright, who volunteers with Whitney Strong, is also a front desk clerk at 4 Points Sheraton, and also, like me, a survivor of gun violence. And I'm so glad she's here.
Actually, during our chat after Whitney's presentation, it's going to be really interesting. And guests, if you'd like to learn more about Rotary, here is our what is Rotary table over here. Even Rotarians, if you want to learn more about Rotary. But the guy who's doing it is there. The table is over here. We have a very special addition to our program today. And it is Veterans Day. There is a real treat for you.
Words are on your tables. If you'd like to sing
If
along.
you'd like to sing along, the words are on the table.
Dale, as we hit the dusty trail. Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We find our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. There's a fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home.
All veterans, civil servants, active duty military, please stand so that we can acknowledge you. I'd like to thank the Friends of Rotary who provided the musical entertainment along with David Wood, the Rotarian, and a special thanks to Barbara Collins who arranged all of that for us. We need to sing more often. You guys have good voices, very good. Please now join me in welcoming Mike Richardson to introduce our speaker.
I first met Whitney in 2009 at Fifth Third Bank when we worked together. I wanted all my clients to work with Whitney because she was so good. She was bright, focused, she took care of the business, and she just got stuff done. And I tried to hire her several times, but her talents went far beyond what I could offer. She became the darling of Fifth Third Bank Corps in Cincinnati. She became the get her done for the bank. Whitney was enjoying her corporate success while married to a very talented artist, Waller Austin. And you need to check out his art because his medium is crayons. WallerAustin.com, really cool. Whitney and Waller were happily raising their 2 children, when on September 6, 2018, everything changed. Whitney was caught in a hail of bullets as she entered the revolving door at the Fifth Third Bank headquarters in Cincinnati. She was shot 12 times by a lone gunman. By the grace of God, Whitney survived but struggled with the question, how do I reconcile that I lived as a result of nearly 1,000 things going right and others died as a result of nearly 1,000 things going wrong? So Ms. Get Her Done, determined to change the conversation around gun violence, founded Whitney Strong. Whitney Strong tirelessly pursues support-based, evidence-based solutions to reduce the number of lives impacted by gun violence through responsible gun ownership. They actively partner at a state and federal level to end the current stalemate gripping our country. They work with community leaders on non-legislative solutions, including suicide prevention, firearm safety and instruction, and much more. The reason I support Whitney Strong financially, and I would ask you to do the same, that Whitney taught me that gun violence has many faces and many victims, like suicide. Please give a warm Rotary reception to my friend Whitney Austin.
Mike, I'm not sure that I need to present now. You did a really great job. So first, First off, I want to say thank you for asking me to be a speaker. I've actually spoken to you before. I don't know if any of you remember, but in 2011, I had to give my final Rotary speech to all of you all. So hopefully I do as well as I did back then. Secondly, I want to give a little bit of a content warning to all of you. I am about to share parts of my story which are traumatic, and maybe it will be difficult for you because you have experienced some form of violence, or maybe you've just recently gone through great loss. But whatever it is, and I'm speaking on behalf of everyone here, we will understand if you need to disengage, compartmentalize, or even leave the room. So let's hold space for that. And if you choose to compartmentalize, I would encourage you at some point to talk about those difficult feelings with someone you trust. One of the main reasons that I am the strong woman that you see in front of you today is because the first time I opened my eyes after the shooting on September 6th, I started telling my story, and I have never stopped. I find it very empowering and healing to continue to talk about what happened to me. So I hope you will explore that as well. Okay, we can go to the first slide. Right, so this is me, and none of it can go on without me sharing a little bit about my story. So as Mike shared, it was September 6th, 2018. I have some memories of what happened before the shooting occurred. It was a beautiful Thursday, the Thursday after Labor Day. I needed to be in Cincinnati as product manager for our unsecured lending portfolio. And like most mornings where I was in a rush to get to Cincinnati, I was behind. So I remember my children, who at the time were 5 and 7, saying, "Mommy, please come back in, give me another kiss, give me a second kiss." So I did, even though I was worried about being late. I rushed in to give them a kiss. As I drove up 71, which I was all too familiar with that drive, I listened to a podcast, I talked to a work friend, but at some point I needed to plug into a conference call with my legal and compliance partners. And those of you in business that have legal and compliance partners, you know that you listen when those phone calls happen and you focus. And so I was very focused on that conference call. And I'll give you little nuggets today of things that you can take home to do differently. And this is one of them. Do not take important conference calls. Do not have important conversations outside of your car, of your home, etc. You need to have situational awareness. And I had absolutely no situational awareness on that day. So as I descended into Cincinnati, I'm on this conference call. I remember losing connectivity as I parked in the garage under Fountain Square, but reconnecting, walking across 5th Street, walking through Fountain Square, and then coming up to the revolving door that I always use to enter corporate headquarters. And I thought, well, that's weird. The glass was shattered, but still fully intact in the revolving door. And there was a small little hole in the door. Never did it cross my mind that that was from a bullet. I just thought, well, that's a little weird. Maybe somebody threw a rock at the door, but not weird enough to prevent me from entering the door. And as soon as I pushed with my right arm into that revolving door is when the first barrage of bullets hit me. The force was so tremendous that I fell to the bottom. Think of a quadrant at the bottom of that revolving door. And I thought, what is happening? I'm feeling this burning situation, but nobody is around me. These have to be bullets. And if these are bullets, this has to be a mass shooting, because what other explanation could there be for what's happening to me? This is what happens in America. But I didn't have time to think about it because I needed to live. I needed to get home to my children. And so I thought, what can I do? What can I do? I tried to get up. I was too injured. My arms were too badly injured to stand up. I looked out onto Fountain Square. There wasn't a soul to save me. And then I tried to call 911. But when I tried to call 911, which didn't work because my left arm was so badly injured I couldn't even use it, is when the next barrage of bullets came. And at that point, I was utterly devastated. I was coughing up blood. I was thinking about my family and had decided that there's nothing else I can do. I'm going to play dead, but I'm going to make peace with God because this is likely the end. And then out of nowhere, on a dime, then arrived Cincinnati Police Department. They did everything right. They had just gone through active shooting training, one of the 1,000 things that went right for me. And I saw Officer Al Staples, who to this day I have a very close relationship with, and I made eye contact with him and I said, you have to save me. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old at home and they need their mother. And he said, there's a 5 and a 7-year-old in there. And I said, no, they're home, they're safe, but you need to save me because I am their mother. And he tells the story to this day, how dangerous it was that I was communicating with him because the shooter was still tracking behind me. But somehow, again, miraculously, they did everything right. They shot through the glass, they took down the shooter, they killed him, and then they were able to come rescue me from that revolving door. From that point on, memories really get pretty fuzzy. I can remember laying on a flagpole bench right there on Fountain Square, and Officer Staples asking if I wanted to talk to my husband. I could hear him screaming, you know, when the information is being conveyed to him, and I said, let me have that phone, let me talk to Waller. And I said, Waller, I have been shot all over and it hurts so badly, but my heart is beating very strongly and I am taking very deep breaths just fine. And my mind is working, so you have to get in the car and you have to get up here. So he jumped in the car with my mother-in-law. My father and mother jumped in the car. They drove very fast up 71. And at some point I passed out. Got an EMS, I remember a very bumpy ride, doing breathing exercises to keep myself calm, in through my nose, out through my mouth, over and over and over again. But then at some point I woke up. I was surrounded by the trauma team at UC Medical Center, which is another group of tremendous heroes. And they said, Whitney, you're a miracle. We have concluded that you were shot 12 times. But as those bullets entered and exited your body, not one of them hit a major organ or artery. And I still can't believe someday that those are my words and that I uttered them to you and that that happened to me, because nobody gets to survive that, nobody. And so you see, I have a very deep well of gratitude. I will never forget what happened to me, never forget that I was given the gift of life and the opportunity to get back to my children. And that is why I do the work of Whitney Strong. All right, we're gonna. Transition out of the crime part now. Go to the next slide, please. This slide might make you want to cry too. So when you think about gun violence prevention, I imagine that one of these images is evoked in your brain. And from my perspective, they represent noise. In my hospital room, my husband and I thought about how we could cut through this noise. I'm not trying to be dismissive. Let me be clear. This noise is tied to loss of life. Unfortunately, that part of the equation is quickly dismissed so that ideology can take precedence. Amid receiving blood transfusions and forcing myself to stand up and make trips to the restroom, those of you that have surgery know all they want you to do is stand up, stand up, stand up. My husband and I were formulating a strategy for success on this issue that has so intimately impacted me. The idea was simple. Ignore the noise. Help our state and those in Washington understand that we have much in common, and efforts to prioritize our differences will only ensure the problem is perpetuated and that the death tied to the noise continues. So what do we have in common? I believe we have a lot in common. Shake your head if you agree with the things that I'm about to say. We all agree that we want our communities to be safe, right? We all agree that we do not want our children to walk into their schools and be shot, right? We all agree that we don't want innocent adolescents at the bus stop to be shot at 6 in the morning, or people like Janae to come home from work in the evening and be shot, right? And we all agree that we don't want those we love that struggle with suicidal thoughts to have easy access to one of the most lethal tools for suicide, firearms, right?
Right.
We have so much in common. Don't listen to the noise. Can you go to the next slide, please? So let me tell you a little bit about myself, my influences, and why I'm in a position to lead in a way that promotes common ground. So that first picture, top row, middle, those beautiful purple sequined dresses. That's Male High School, where I went to school. I spent all 12 years of my primary and secondary schooling in JCPS, where diversity was built into the system. Not only did I experience this gift through school, the show choir in those purple sequin dresses, I cherished so much, put me in a position to spend a lot of time with a diverse group of people who were all united in our desire to perform. Next, I'll talk about my father. Sorry, you can keep it up there to the right. That picture is him and me with President Bentaputi. I was honored in the last couple of weeks to get the Emerging Leader Award from the U of L Alumni Awards. My father, who I love tremendously, nominated me for that award and has had a tremendous impact on my life. Dad is deeply conservative, both in his faith and in his politics, and has always taught me to be kind and to prioritize helping others. Now to Fifth Third Bank, that is corporate headquarters. That's where I was shot. But I would not be here as well if it were not for the almost 18 years of grooming that I received at Fifth Third Bank to become a leader. There are no labels in business. I miss it sometimes. No labels that prevent progress. You have deadlines and goals, and while it's not completely true, I think most of you will agree that that's all that matters. Get the goals completed, get the projects completed. In the bottom row in the middle, that's my brother-in-law, Lonnie Gardner, and my beautiful niece, Clark. Lonnie entered my life during those show choir years at Vail High School and married my sister in 2008. While I thought I knew a bit about prioritizing equity, my journey was just beginning. I am so blessed to see my family expand into different races and ethnicities. And I'm also so blessed that they are there along with me to help me learn how to be a better ally and to focus on the unique issues that each face. Then there's the guy with the rifle. That's my cousin's husband, Jonathan Burba. He's a firearm enthusiast, member of the NRA, and husband of Lindsay, who nursed me back to health for 45 days after the shooting. We would not have made it as a family without her doing everything from washing my hair to taking the kids to school. Jonathan is not an outlier in our circle. I grew up with a gun in the house. My husband and I are gun owners, and there are many, many people we love in the state that are gun owners. And then finally, my husband, Mike talked about him a little bit. He's the orange crown sculpture. You may have guessed, he's an artist, an interdisciplinary artist, and as a young family, we relocated in our early 30s so that he could pursue advanced degrees in art at the Art Institute of Chicago and Washington University. And in addition to being my greatest supporter to let me do this work, to support me so that I can, he has also exposed me to the art scene, which is generally progressive and also progressive because it involves a lot of people that, at this point we say we're older. So I share all this not to say that I'm a pinnacle of diverse experiences, but I have said this is really important to me. So I'm going to continue to expand my circle to hear diverse points of view. And it is with these people and all of these moments that Whitney Strong was created. So the next slide. So from all of this, Whitney Strong was manifested with 14 board members across 5 states and 3 employees across 2. We are committed to finding common ground to end gun violence through data-driven responsible gun ownership solutions. In just 3 years, so we started the organization within just a couple of weeks of the shooting, we have been able to accomplish so much. It barely feels like a job, and at the end of each day, I feel like it's time to go again and have so much energy. Let me tell you about some of the things we've done that I'm very proud of. First off, since September 2018, we have distributed 8,000 gun locks across Kentucky and Ohio in partnership with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Secondly, we have distributed more than 5,000 gun locks directly to pediatrician offices across the state of Kentucky, along with suicide prevention information in partnership with the Kentucky chapter of the Academy of Pediatrics. Here in Louisville, closer to home, we have trained more than 300 people in evidence-based trainings to prevent gun violence in the communities that see the highest levels. I have personally met with more than 100 legislators, and that includes at the state levels for both Kentucky, Ohio, and at the federal level. We've had volunteers that have logged more than 5,000 hours worth of service. We have amassed more than 5,000 supporters across 33 different states. Now we get into some of the legislative successes that I am most proud of, because I believe that legislation has the aptitude to impact the most people. We were the first organization to bring a hearing to Frankfurt on mass violence. And the achievement of all achievements, we are proud to spearhead the only, and I truly mean the only, bipartisan effort to reduce mass violence in the entire country, and with the help of state senators Morgan McGarvey and Paul Hornbeck. Our work and its unique nature was just recently featured in the USA Today with an opinion piece that I wrote. Very proud of the way we do things differently. So you can go to the next slide. My job, as I see it, is a lot of things, but one of them is to educate you on the size and the scope of the problem. And the first thing you need to understand is, what do I mean when I say gun violence? What you need to understand is that gun violence means that someone has been injured or killed, and the tool that they used to do that was a gun. That is what gun violence is. And so that is a broad range in terms of violence. So it could be that someone completed suicide with a firearm. It could be that it was an accidental shooting. It could have been domestic violence. It could have been what happened to me at the Third Bank. It could be community violence, like what happened to Janae. Those are all forms of gun violence. And the size of the problem is likely much bigger than you expect. So each year, approximately 40,000 people die of gun violence. That is in line with other leading causes of death in America. It's about the same number of people that die every year of breast cancer, and about the same number of people that die every year of automobile accidents. So we have got to reckon with the size of this problem. Also, as Americans who value our children, we have to understand the risk that we're taking on in this country. American kids are 9 times more likely to die in an inadvertent shooting than kids in other developed countries. And speaking of our kids, our suicide rates are growing exponentially. The suicide rate for ages 10 to 24 have increased 60% since 2007. And then lastly, we are in a unique period of violence because of the pandemic and other factors. 2020 had the highest firearm death rate in over 20 years per the Gun Violence Archive, which, by the way, is a really unique group out of Lexington, Kentucky that gets quoted everywhere as really the most accurate real-time data, so check them out. So next slide. Let's talk about Kentucky and zoom in just a little bit. Every year, about 1,700 people are shot in Kentucky, and this is CDC data, so it doesn't include 2020, so that's only going to go up. Over 720 people die. It's the second leading cause of death for Kentucky kids, ages 1 to 24. We are ranked poorly. We have the 18th highest gun death rate of every state. Like so many other states, almost 2 out of 3 deaths in this state are attributed to suicide. And we are not headed in the right direction, with a 20% increase in our fatality rate over the last decade. Just to make it feel a bit more real, you should know that these types of gun violence impact populations differently. So when it comes to homicide in Kentucky, Black males aged 15 to 34 have a firearm homicide rate that is nearly 15 times higher than white males of the same age group. And when you think about suicide in this state, white males ages 75 plus are at highest risk for suicide. So the way I see it, we've all got skin in this game. You can go to the next slide. At Whitney Strong, we do not believe in grabbing all of the bright, shiny objects. We're a lean team. We cannot take on all the solutions, so we're going to take on 3. And right now, we're taking on those that we believe stand the greatest chance for progress. So at Whitney Strong, we act on data to implement educational opportunities. We fund research to find data-driven steps to reverse the pervasiveness of gun violence. And we take a nonpartisan approach to legislation in Kentucky, Ohio, and the federal level. You can go to the next slide. So the first area of common ground, education. We can all agree that individuals have the propensity to make their communities safer. This is where Save a Life comes into play. This is our marquee program that we offer in Louisville, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Ohio. Whitney Strong has chosen to prioritize the top 5 neighborhoods in our city for gun violence. Those neighborhoods are California, Russell, Shawnee, and Portland. Oops, and I forgot Park Hill, sorry, Park Hill. Each session is offered at no cost to the community and brings evidence-based prevention trainings that can reduce gun violence and its impact. So what does that mean, evidence-based? We offer Stop the Bleed training, which helps anybody know what to do if trauma occurs and bleeding is uncontrolled. Secondly, we offer suicide prevention training, both to lay people as well as professionals. And then lastly, we offer firearm safety instruction, which is just as much about safe handling as it is about safe storage. All participants lead with actionable steps to change the trajectory of gun violence in their neighborhood, along with the tools to do it, which include gun safety and bleeding control kits. And in 2022, we have set a goal to train 1,000 people. Let me share with you why this is important in our city right now. You can go to the next slide. So youth suicide is a problem in our city. So far this year, and this is through October 31st, 29 people aged 25 and under have died by suicide in Louisville. That is the highest number recorded for this age group since the county began tracking in 2014. And just to take it a step further, because you've heard now the communities that we focus on, the suicide death rate among Black youths is increasing faster than any other race or ethnic group. Accidents, shooting accidents are a problem in our city. According to Norton Children's Hospital, reports of child accidental shootings in Louisville are rising. In 2019, there were 26. In 2020, there were 60. So far this year through June, there were already 32. There are lots of hypotheses as to why this is. Certainly kids spending more time at home during the pandemic. And then lastly, homicide. And as leaders in this community, I doubt I even need to talk about this. In 2021, we've seen over 170 homicides, which is 25% more than we saw in 2020, which was again the most violent year in decades, and 118% more than 2019. And in case you aren't familiar with the trajectory of that, my good friends at the Pegasus Institute have a wonderful dashboard that you can check into, but you can see in the early 2010 range, that number was closer to 50. So we have seen a significant increase in recent years. So while Save a Life focuses on multiple evidence-based trainings, firearm safety, instruction, and safe storage is a top priority. Let me tell you why. We can go to the next slide. In a months-long investigation, the Courier Journal, they've done some great reporting on stolen guns, found more than 1,000 examples of stolen guns later tied to criminal investigations. Those weapons were used in robberies and drug deals. They were carried by children, clutched by suicidal men, and found under murder victims. As part of that report that covered this or followed this for 6 years, they also found that 1,100 firearms were stolen from vehicles. Secondly, let's talk about how safe storage can help with youth suicide. A Harvard study found that 82% of firearm suicides among youth ages 17 and under used a family member's gun. These kids are using our guns. We have a responsibility to safely store them. A modeling study in JAMA found that if 20% more gun owners with children locked their firearms, as many as a third of youth suicides and accidental deaths would be avoided. And sadly, this came out of the Kentucky Issues poll recently. Only 12% of Kentucky gun owners with children report that they lock their firearm at home. This is something we talk about constantly and Save a Life. And if there is nothing else you take from me out of this meeting, if you are a gun owner, when you are not carrying, you need to safely store. This can help reduce violent crime in our community. It can reduce adolescent suicide, and it can reduce accidents. You can go to the next slide. So where else do we have common ground? Research. We focus on research at Whitney Strong. This is something that I find a lot of people don't know, but for nerds like me who've dedicated their life to reducing violence, I now know these things. Did you know that federal funding for gun violence prevention research was halted for more than 2 decades due to the Dickey Amendment? As a result, disparities exist in the volume of research across leading causes of death. So let me make that real for you. For example, 50 times more scientific articles are published on childhood cancer, which is the 5th leading cause of death for adolescents, than on firearm violence, which is the 2nd leading cause of death for American kids. Efforts to build common ground around the causes and solutions of gun violence can be greatly increased by funding research. Thanks to a bipartisan effort in Congress, $25 million was finally appropriated to the CDC and the NIH in December of 2019. And I say this all the time. It has been the single most hopeful moment that I have experienced in the 3 years that I have done this work. It was a crack in the dam that things are finally changing when Congress could come together on this issue. And now researchers across the country have access to funds that weren't available for decades. This means quality research is coming from our universities and foundations, and in more technical terms, more studies will lead to conclusive evidence, which means that will go a long way toward building consensus as common ground, because we really need to believe and know that these solutions are going to actually reduce gun violence before we put them into effect. So to help fill the gap, we will fund where we can, and we currently have a project in the works with Cincinnati Children's Hospital to assess different forms of treatment that would help reduce adolescent suicide with parents and children that end up in the emergency room because of either suicidal thoughts or they have actually attempted. And so the next slide. And our last area of common ground, legislation. You may think that's an oxymoron. That may seem puzzling to you. In this noisy and partisan world, where is there any common ground on legislation? So I've included these 2 images for you. They're from Pew. Pew does a wonderful job with nonpartisan research, and I thought that they would help, provide some evidence for this theory that I have. First, over to the right, Pew released this survey in April of this year. First noticed that 3 out of 10 Americans are gun owners, and that 4 out of 10 live in gun-owning households. We're already sharing. I'm a gun owner, my husband's a gun owner, so we're right there in those numbers. This is a large contingent, and why we are so keen on inviting gun owners into our movement, because no change will ever occur by ignoring their needs and the reason that they are gun owners. Second, notice the top 2 policies for common ground between Republicans and Democrats. You can see the R's are the red, the blues are the Dems. The closer they are together, the more common ground exists. So the top policy for common ground, preventing people with mental illnesses from purchasing guns and making private gun sales and sales at gun shows subject to background checks. Well, guess what we are going to focus on? We aren't going to get caught up in all the other policies that clearly show wide gaps in favorability. At Whitney Strong, we will continue to lobby for comprehensive background checks at the federal level and crisis aversion and rights retention in Kentucky, a bill that can ensure those struggling with mental health do not have access to a firearm. So then the next slide. I imagine that these pictures are sure to fire up someone. Once again, I will remind you to block out the noise and focus on what we have in common, which is keeping our communities safe. So let me tell you a little bit about CAR. Our Kentucky bill, Crisis Aversion and Rights Retention, is the bill that I mentioned at the beginning, the only bipartisan effort to reduce mass violence in the entire country with the help of state senators Morgan McGarvey and Paul Hornbeck. As we head into 2022 session, I want you to be informed of how it works so that you can make sure your legislator knows you support common ground solutions to preventing gun violence and that you are with Whitney Strong in our efforts to prioritize common ground. You now know how large the suicide problem is in our state. And while a public mass shooting has not occurred here since Marshall County in 2018, many months before my shooting occurred in Cincinnati, Ohio, would you believe that there are generations in Paducah, Kentucky, who first saw their children involved in the Heath High School shooting in 1997 and now see their grandchildren involved in the Marshall County shooting? I know some of those people and they work with us at Whitney Strong. Crisis moments, which is what this is about. This is about a crisis moment, can erupt for all of us, gun owners included. But when they include imminent threat to harm self or others, we need a legal path to help, and we do not have one today, folks. There is no legal path to do anything about this. CAR is a one-of-a-kind risk protection law modeled after domestic violence protection orders that would allow for law enforcement only to petition a court to temporarily separate a gun owner from their firearm when they are intent upon harming themselves or others. During this period, the court would encourage participation in support services because after all, we're trying to help this person in crisis to get them back to a place in which gun ownership is safe. That's where the rights retention part comes into play. Let's get you better. Let's get you back to that right to own a firearm. With nearly 400 lives lost by suicide by gun each year in Kentucky, this bill can help so many. In evidence, this law has shown that one life is saved from suicide for every 10 to 20 orders that are placed. That's 20 to 40 lives just next year we could save from suicide. Additionally, new research is showing the efficacy of these types of laws in reducing mass violence like what happened today. And for those of you that are concerned about financial impact, this does not require additional funding at the state level, as the process would fit seamlessly into existing processes with law enforcement and the judiciary system. We can all agree to prioritize the mental health of our gun-owning community through crisis aversion and rights retention. So then the next slide. In conclusion, I survived something tremendous. And because of that, I'm committed. I'm really, really committed, almost unimaginably committed. I will never forget what I felt like at the bottom of that revolving door when I believed that my life was going to end because of an incident of mass violence. I will spend the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form trying to convince those in a position of power, some of you may be in this room, that we need to think differently, we need to work differently, and we need to come together to solve this problem. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Whitney. We've done this a couple of times together and I've seen your presentation single time is even more powerful. It really is. I want to bring up your guest, Janae.
Everybody, this is Janae Wright, and I had the blessing of meeting Janae a little bit earlier this summer. And if she feels comfortable, she can tell more about her story, but we are united in the fact that we have both survived the unimaginable, and we will not forget it, and we do not want it to happen to others.
This one? Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Like she said, I'm Janae Wright. I too am a survivor of gun violence. I came into contact with Whitney, I believe in February of this year, not much longer after my shooting occurred, which at the time I was 9 weeks pregnant. So in the midst of being attacked, I was also navigating motherhood. It was very cold that evening, right as that ice and snowstorm hit this early February, the Monday after Super Bowl Sunday. I went into work. Actually, before I could even arrive to work, I had a fender bender. I crashed into the back of an old F-150 and pulled over frantically, went to exchange information with the older gentleman, and he said it's his fault. He didn't brake, he didn't signal, he just kind of went for the turn. I was very gracious and went about the day, a little shaken up, thought maybe I could have injured the baby. Called my doctor, she assured me that as long as there was no bleeding or headache or cramping, I should be fine. Get into work, my bosses, they were very understanding. I was emotional at the time, not only just being pregnant, but having a wreck tends to shake me up a little bit. The day goes on, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, I'm being pulled into my boss's office, and they're offering me a promotion to go down and run our Daytona, Florida new beachfront rooftop hotel that they had recently purchased. And they wanted me to take over for 6 or 7 months until they could hire a regional manager down there. So excited to take their promotion. I called my family, let them know that, hey, I'll be home for doctor's visits and to deliver the child, but for now I'm headed to Florida. I'll be living on the beach for this pregnancy. I go to clock out work. A friend in Alaska at the time, I was going to see her the next weekend, which would have been February 15th, Valentine's Day, would have been the day I left. And I tell her, hey, I'll call you back when I get home. We're on a FaceTime video chat. I stopped at the gas station because I didn't want to be on the E, knowing that we're going to go into freezing temperatures. I grew up in upstate New York, so I know not to let the car be on a low gas tank. And as I'm arriving home, I see some gentlemen in the car. I think nothing of it. I lived down by Churchill Downs at the time, where we have street parking. There are no driveways. So I think nothing of it at all. As soon as I'm getting out of my car, they're getting out of their car. They begin to approach me. I'm thinking, maybe he has a question, he doesn't know where he is, where he's going. And before I could say anything to him, there he was, and he had his firearm in my face. He insisted that I handed him my purse. So I cooperated, and as I began to give him my purse, he just shots rang out. Immediately, it seemed like almost after he shot me the first time, I was on the ground. And that was the third shot. After after he stopped shooting, I remember I jumped up with a burst of adrenaline, and I took off running to my right, which is my maternal first cousin's house. I was, in my head, my goal was to get to her porch so that I could alert her ring system. And from her ring system, she could call 911. But I didn't make it that far. I dropped, my legs just went completely heavy, just unable to walk from that point. And I'm digging into the wet ground because we had like a light dusting the day of. I start screaming my neighbors' names, help me, Mr. Dennis, Miss Sherry, help me. And once they finally came outside, it took them a while to see me because at this point it's 10:30 at night, almost 11 o'clock. When they did come out,
I screamed, get your gun, they shot me, don't leave, I'm afraid they're gonna come back. 911's called, the first officer there, he helps me, they begin to put pressure on my wounds. And in the back of the EMT, I remember once they had got me loaded up and put back there, I just kind of grabbed onto the two workers and I let them know, I said, please don't let me die, this will kill my family. I'm the 9th grandchild, but my mother is the 3rd child, and she died 18 years ago, coming up this November, the 19th of this month. So I just knew how much it would hurt my family for not only have lost my mother, but to lose me too. And I just pleaded, please don't let me die. I'm pregnant. I even said that to the assailant, but they didn't stop him from shooting me. I told him he could have everything, he could have the car, I'll even open my house, there's electronics, TVs, I have some nice things in here, you can have it all. Wasn't the mission that night. We get down to Uville, mind you, I'm thinking I've been shot 3 times. I'm informed that I have been shot 6 times actually. And the reason why I could not walk was one actually hit me in my left femoral nerve, which if you're familiar with anatomy, it's right next to your femoral artery. Had that been hit, I would have made it to Uville. I would bled out within 3 minutes. Also, hence why I don't have the stabilist walk right now, because we had to relearn how to walk this year. The incident luckily did not take my child's life. I was able to successfully carry on my pregnancy, and my baby didn't go through any, he hasn't suffered any developmental issues so far. He's only 2 months old, but everything seems to be good. He's doing well with Papa right now, but that was what saved me that night, was my son. And Whitney and I, we both took instruction at Dance Unlimited in our youth. There's a slight age gap between us, but since we have the same instructor, she let me know, hey, I can't imagine what you're going through. Have you been shot 6 times? I know someone who's been shot 12. You want to reach out to her? And I actually was a little intimidated to reach out first. So I'm thinking, you only got shot 6 times. How did you can't contact her? What's there? And so she's been great support. And I like to think of our relationship as like a mentorship. And my role that I like to play at Whitney Strong is kind of recruiting people for emotional support, if they need any type of resources and information with just processing some emotions that come along with being a gun violence survivor. Whitney's a great help with that. And I'm very grateful for our friendship and her even inviting me here to be with you all today. I wasn't really prepared to speak, so I hope I've done it.
I am always respectful of your time, and we're going to continue with this conversation because I know some of you have questions. If you need to leave, please, we will grant you that grace, we understand. But this is just too powerful to stop right now. So, but do you have a question?
I'm Cliff Elgin. I am a gun owner. I was taught firearm safety decades ago by the NRA. I no longer support that organization. I looked at this a little bit differently. For the politicians that are in Washington who are opposing any kind of gun control legislation, the maximum amount of money that the NRA can donate to them is $2,900. So if you take the 170 deaths in Louisville this year, that works out to about $17.50 per person, per death, per human life. If you look at the 140,000 that Whitney talked about in this country, that comes to 2 cents per human life. That's what our legislatures who are opposing gun control are doing. But to me, that's what they're supporting with for their $2,900, 2 cents for a human life.
Or relationship with the NRA?
To be honest, I don't have a relationship with the NRA, neither my husband or I as gun owners are members of the NRA. I would certainly hoped that they would endorse our legislation in Kentucky, but that has not been the case. So I've not had any success.
Thank you. I'm Larry Sloan, and I had the really good experience of writing with a couple of police officers about 3 years ago in District Number 2. And they were both African Americans. One of them was working on his master's in criminology. And I asked them both what was the biggest problem they had in terms of gun violence. And he said, the problem is if we catch somebody with a gun that they don't have a permit for, we take them down to jail and they're released within an hour. He said a lot of them come from Indiana because they're here to do drug deals. In Indiana, if they're caught with a gun that they don't have a permit for, they wind up paying a large fine and 1 year in jail. So they prefer to come over here where they can get off scot-free basically for carrying a gun without a permit. So I know you work with Ohio, but I'm wondering, I just think there needs to be a commonality of legislation. It's like a crazy quilt. Every area has their own legislation. It doesn't make sense to me for somebody who doesn't have a permit to get off scot-free. So what's your take on that? Are you looking to expand into working with other states? We have 7 surrounding states here, so it's a lot of states. But every state has their own rules and regulations. That's where you would think a federal law might be the best way. So I'm just curious as to what you think.
I'll take you back to reality. We see that situation as a result of states having different values. And because we've seen such a stalemate at the federal level, really the only progress we've seen either in expanding gun rights or limiting gun rights is happening at the state level, because that's where there are more common beliefs and more momentum. So do I think that will always be the case and that we shouldn't be hopeful that someday we can get federal law that makes us all much more organized? No, I think we should have that hope. I think it goes back to that moment in 2019 where for 2 decades, they blocked funding research. And then all of a sudden in 2019, there was that first crack in the dam. So it's coming. I just went through a PowerPoint yesterday with my intern from Xavier, who went through every one of those funded projects. And I'm here to tell you that they are going to produce some findings. And those same legislators that said, okay, do the research, are now going to be in a place to say, oh, but I don't believe it. But you funded it, so you're gonna have to believe it, and you're gonna have to do something about it. So it is just the beginning of change occurring. So I will encourage you to have hope. It's not enough, it's not fast enough, but things are changing.
Thank you, Madam President. Whitney and Janae, first let me just say thank God for both of you surviving, which you survived, and for fulfilling a purpose that we see on full display today. Just a testament of God's presence in our lives. So thank you for what you're doing. My question is around local community impact. And we know that, Louisville is on pace to break another record year in homicides, 173 last year, tracking toward, exceeding that this year. And from a public finance standpoint, the mayor's quadrupled the budget for safe and healthy neighborhoods. I don't know if you've had a chance to interact with the team there, but I'm just wondering what advice you give us as a local community around impacting the kind of change that you're talking about that we need to see. So what advice do you offer?
Yeah, I was gonna say, excuse me. You're asking on behalf of the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods?
Yeah, for the community, but Yeah, we had a chance to talk to those, some of the patients, what was you
I've actually, yes, I have worked with them. They've been very present in my recovery. I actually commend them for the work that they've done. More specifically, I know she just received a promotion, Tonika Bacon. Very vigilant on making sure that survivors get the help that they need, the resources that are provided are being offered to you. I would say if the university, if the trauma teams, the nurses, however, whatever specialists that are at the hospitals could set people up with the Office of Safety, Healthy Neighborhoods, that would probably be more beneficial because they're at this point only referred word of mouth. If you don't know someone else who is a survivor or someone who's used their services, you have no idea that they exist. If it wasn't for a family member who I know that works for the housing authority, I would have never known about the Office of Safety and Healthy Neighborhoods. They provided me not with only physical therapy treatments, but with therapy. I'm sorry, losing my words. We've yes, counseling and mentoring, trauma specialists, needs for my baby, being that I was pregnant at the time. In the event you don't have a supportive family or no one else to support you financially, they have different financial institutions that they can set you up with to get you help. I would say maybe they could be more active in the schools, because a lot of these recent gun violence instances are happening with the youth. I know my assailant was definitely between the ages of 15 and 17. So I think if they could start with getting them, reaching out with them first, then they'd be more successful in what we do.
Have a presence in emergency rooms.
Yeah, so one of the programs that's offered through the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods is called Pivot to Peace, and it is a hospital intervention program. Janae and I have not talked about how it was lacking in her scenario, but there is a board member for Whitney Strong, Terrell Williams, with the exact opposite experience. His shooting left him in a wheelchair, and so not only did they help support him with making sure his car was prepared so that he could drive, helping his apartment be retrofitted for his disability, but helping at times with paying for medication, and then also helping him move from JCTC into the University of Louisville. And so those hospital intervention programs are somewhat popular. One of the CDC funded research projects will test their efficacy, so I can't wait for those results. But I can say in the case of Terrell that he tremendously benefited from that program. And then back to the question about just what we can do as a community. This is a multifaceted problem. You can see that we have chosen to talk about gun laws, right? Because that's a universal solution that can prevent multiple forms. But we need so much more than that. There has been a lot of effort to prioritize dollars into the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, ARP funds, but we need more after school programming for these kids. We need more mental health resources. We need more community centers. You know, there's a reason that these things are happening, and oftentimes it's due to lack of investment. So that's how we can help prioritize your dollars and your words and let people know that you care about that section of Louisville.
Thank you, President West. I'm Chris Monzo, new member, principal of Sandbox Design, and I am proud to be a part of the Whitney Strong organization as a firearm owner and as a citizen. So that's been really good. Thank you for sharing your story also. Great to hear your full story. My question for you is, what would your third, your next step, your next legislative step, area of commonality that you want to pursue besides the background checks?
Well, Q tells me there's not one, so. I don't know, I have a deep desire to protect our children, and so I think there's a way to compromise around some version of storage requirements. I know that the pushback there is, if something happens to a child, then we're now talking about criminalizing the parent who has potentially already lost a child. But I think that is a good way to make the conversation a dead end, and I do think there are ways to talk around that and to come up with something. So probably my heart is in trying to protect the kids.
Thank you, President West. That might have been a segue that means maybe I don't have to ask my question. But first and foremost, Whitney and Janae, thank you for the courage, and thanks to the grace of God that you're both safe and the work you're doing is amazing. All of you know that my bias, I love you as adults and I need your support and you're amazing humans. My bias is towards kids. And I think there's a little bit of desensitization that is totally concerning. And so I'm not going to center myself, but I want to build context in 1 minute, or less, I promise, 10 seconds. As a head of school in Connecticut, it was petrifying to be next to Newtown and be like, holy moly, I got to protect my kids. And the system, what we're doing is teaching the kids to hide. And I would love to be feet on the ground about building prevention plans. And I know as fellow Rotarians, you all do the very same thing. I moved here on July 1st, and then was playing around with Tony Kemper for a year before that, around work. And that said, definitely around work. So the DePaul kids, you love them, I love them, that's why I'm here. The city of Louisville is amazing, and we know that. September 21st, and you know where my school is. I live nearby, another leader lives nearby. Please do not repeat this out of context. I trust you, fellow Rotarians. September 21st, that morning, out my back door, 20 yards away, a carjacking shooting. I'm daughter of a sportsman, I'm not against guns. And then there's 10 bullets, nobody's injured, yay. I get to school, I'm like, well, that was an interesting morning. At my house, later that same day, same neighborhood, one of my leadership team texts and says, this must be the magic day. And, is carjacked at his own home, the bullets are on the ground. None of us got hurt, but I am scared for the children because everyone who is holding a gun is less than 18 years old. So if there are preventive measures, because we know it worked when kids went home when you're my age and told your parents not to smoke. And so if we can empower kids, I can't do it at my school because I can't say, come help me not get your kid shot, that kind of thing. But, and I know that's sloppy language, but we're desensitized at a level that petrifies me for my kids at school. I'm sorry about the story, but I'm wondering if there are opportunities for us to feet on the ground in the community because kids are powerful teachers.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love that you just brought that up. We were lucky enough to receive a $50,000 grant from the Gannett Foundation in partnership with USA Today. At the time, it was our largest grant ever and second national grant. As part of that application, we agreed to produce videos focused on firearm safety. And multiple audiences would be for children. So something for K through 12, 3 through 5, middle school and high school, because I've personally been asked by JCPS, do you have anything that we can share with the middle schoolers? And so we wanted to produce 13, 50,000 doesn't get you to 13, but we are going to start with 5. And so I'd love to talk to you about ideas to how to get that out in the community. And honestly, if anybody else in the room feels really passionately about this type of video would play well with my audience, because that's the point. It needs to spread like wildflowers.
President-elect Walker.
Hello, President Jean, and thank you, guests, for your stories and for your work. Everybody here knows that Iroquois High School is one of the 2 that we've adopted, and we've adopted it since 2011. The previous principal, Rob Volk, pleaded with us and said, what can we do? This was during the pandemic. And I think that they lost 17 students, and I think 6 were murdered by handguns. Anyway, said, what can Rotary do? Said, be advocates for gun violence safety. So one, I would challenge you all, when you make these videos, please have Iroquois at one of the top of your list. All of our schools are important, but dear to Rotary is Iroquois. And our principal there just talks about that. What else? I mean, he was saying advocate for reducing gun violence. What can we do within Metro? And I know, I hope that you will send us your bill that we can actually contact our legislators at the state level, but there's stuff that could be done at the local level too. So if you could tell us, maybe that could be a follow-up to this really important meeting, because kids are dying and kids are killing people, and it's just tough. But thank you for your difficult work.
Welcome, thank you. A couple of things on that. So first off, when it comes to laws that impact firearms in the state of Kentucky, those laws have to pass at the state level because of preemption. So absolutely, I will share with you the bill. I will give you all the information. And if you're not calling Whitney Strong, go to social media. It's at Whitney Strong. You'll see everything you need when session kicks off in January. At the local level, again, because of preemption, there's very little that can be done by way of laws. But certainly there are things that can be done in terms of prevention through programs, prioritization of dollars, et cetera. And so I know that Barbara Sexton can talk all about this stuff, but it is important to pay attention to what's coming out of the mayor's office and the prioritization of dollars. And back to what I said before, we've got a community that needs investment. So whether it's putting your dollars toward after school programs, putting your dollars for new community centers, and following the experts as to what prevention programs will work in the city, that's what we need to do. We need to pay attention to those ideas.
All right, thank you, Whitney, Janae. Okay, Rotarians, thank you so much for hanging in there. Listen, this has been an awesome program. The nominating committee has been hard at work identifying candidates for board positions. So the slate of candidates will be announced November 18th. The voting to follow. Our new leadership team will be introduced at our holiday celebration annual meeting on December 1st. Thank you all so much for staying. It's been just an amazing meeting. I will put the announcements and sparks around the time. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.